I'm Scott Paul, and this is the Manufacturing Report.
As long as the mill's producing, all the outside contractors, all the suppliers are going to be able to employ more people. And as long as they keep producing the steel, it's good for the whole region. No steel mill, this region doesn't exist.
This week on the Manufacturing Report, we visit Northwest Indiana. This part of Indiana is the most intensive steelmaking part of the country and has been since the mid-1970s. The economy there is literally formed around the steel industry. We talk to workers, we talk to members of the community, we talk to a local professor about how things are going in the steel industry, what it means to be a steel worker in today's economy, and what the administration's tariffs are doing to help or hurt the industry. That's next on the Manufacturing Report. Our first stop was Chesterton, Indiana, home of the United Steelworkers Local 6787. We talked to steelworkers with a century of experience in the steel mills in Gary, Indiana, and in Porter County, Indiana, about what it's like to be a steelworker in today's economy. We are in Chesterton, Indiana at the Steelworker Local 6787 Hall. I have with me 6 steelworkers who have a combined more than 200 years of steelmaking experience. We're here to talk about what steel jobs mean to the community, how the industry is doing, and what the industry in particular means to this region of the country, which is the largest steelmaking region in the United States. I'm going to ask each of the steelworkers to identify themselves. They're going to tell you who they are, where they're from, how long they've been making steel and where, and many of them hold positions within the United Steelworkers Union. Gus, why don't we start with you?
My name is Gus Satsis. I have 41 years of service with U.S. Steel. I live in Hanna, Indiana, and I'm currently president of Local 1014.
My name is Michael Mitchell. I'm a retired steelworker with over 30 years. I live in Maryville, Indiana.
My name is Mark Sain. I work for U.S. Steel. I currently live in Gary, Indiana, and I'm co-chairman of safety.
My name is Mike Wheeler. I live in DeMont, Indiana. I work for a company called Chrome Deposit Corporation in Portage. I am the unit chairman, and I've been with the Steelworkers for 23 years.
Hi, my name is Bill Richardson from Westville, Indiana. I'm currently the treasurer of Local 6787 and also a contract coordinator, 26 years in the steel industry.
Walter Fultz, I'm from Portage, Indiana. I've been a member of the United Steelworkers 6787 for 50-some years.
Thank you, gentlemen. Northwest Indiana, just outside of Chicago, has been the largest steelmaking region in the country since the mid-1970s. That was a title that Pittsburgh used to hold, but Northwest Indiana has made more steel than any other part of the U.S. since that time. That means there's a whole bunch of jobs here that are dependent upon the health of the industry. And if you travel on any of the interstates or roads, you'll see lots of semi-trailers, lots of suppliers, lots of vendors that are directly connected with some of the large mills that are here. I think I wanted to ask some of the gentlemen who had the longest years of service kind of what it's been like over the decades, what they've seen. And Wally, I thought I might start with you. I mean, when you entered the industry, how was it doing, and how's it doing today compared to when you started?
Well, when I entered it was going okay because they was hiring people, getting people out there, and you could get quite a bit of experience from the gentlemen that you work with. They had been there for a while. As it kept going, they kept hiring, in my opinion, less people. So you're losing the talent and skill that was built up for many years, and that's just the way it's been going here lately. They don't bring people in to train they don't have the people to train them like they used to. Not our training program, but I'm talking about just people that's been in the mill for a while. Things you learn from different people, hands-on and everything.
Yeah, and when you signed up to work in the mill, did you have a family history, or what attracted you to a job in steel?
My brother worked over there he's been there 56 years. So, I came up to get a job here, see how things go. Back then, I didn't know if I'd last 30 days, and I've been here 50 years, so.
And Gus, let me ask you as well. So what attracted you, first of all, to a job at U.S. Steel? What did it mean to you?
Well, my grandfather started at U.S. Steel Gary Works in 1918, so
Wow.
actually we're been out in that plant for over 100 years. It was a good job, it had good benefits, it gave me a future. I was actually going to go into the trades, but I have completed 2 apprenticeships, so I had my training at work and actually got paid for it, so it was a win-win situation for me.
Yeah, sounds that way. Mike Mitchell, you've been in this area for a long time. I know you were local president. You worked in the mill. You've done some field work for us, and you're blissfully retired now. You know, for Lake and Porter counties, for this region, how important is the steel industry? I mean, you must see it in the stores and the communities.
I have seen it in the whole area, Scott. The steel industry at its high days had a huge multiplier effect for other jobs in the community in there. When I came into the steel industry in '75, we had over 18,000 employees just in one local in there. So that was a huge employment thing as far as shopping, where people bought homes, cars, and everything in there. There were a lot of mom and pop shops that were doing well too in the community. As the steel industry started to go through some changes, as in foreign steel and dumping and subsidies in there, it started to cut back, and it hurt that industry a lot. Therefore, it hurt the community as well.
Yeah. And so this is a persistent problem. I mean, this isn't something that just popped up and then went away. We've been facing the import challenge for probably, 30 years at least?
At least, yes. The steel industry was on its way. There had been quite a few steel industries that was in bankruptcy, and during the President Bush Jr. era, there was a big push to stop some of that stuff from taking place in there, or the steel industry in America would have collapsed as a whole. So in that sense, the tariffs and the things that he put on is credited with helping save the steel industry, thereby helping save other communities and jobs in this country.
Mm-hmm. And Mark, what's it like when there are layoffs at the mill? I mean, what kind of happens? What do you see?
Well, Scott, when there's a layoff in this area, it affects the whole entire area, because right now, one employee actually employs 5 other outside jobs. For every one job inside of U.S. Steel or the steel mills, there's 5 other jobs that's affected by it. So it has a tremendous effect on it. The businesses slow down. There's no cars being bought. There's no houses being sold. The store slows down, because if we're not producing or not putting out the volume, then it affects everyone. So this community just pretty much dries up. You know, it comes to pretty much a halt, because of the effect that we have on the outgoing community. 1 in every 4 households depends on the steel mills around here. The steel mills.
You said 1 in 4.
Yes.
Wow.
Because
this
this community was built on steel mills. If you survey the households in this community, you'll find out that either someone retired from the steel mill, currently working in the steel mill, or just got hired in the steel mill. This is the bread and butter of Northwest Indiana, is the steel mill. So if something happens around here that the steel mills stop producing and we the community, the gates close on the steel mill, it'll have a tremendous effect on us.
Yeah, indeed. Mike Wheeler, let me ask you, because I know you're from a little more rural part of Indiana like myself. I mean, the jobs in the mills, I imagine, particularly for folks that don't go on, get a 4-year college degree or something like that, it's probably hard to beat a job in the steel mill.
It is. With our company, we are a contractor to the mills. And they're good paying, skilled jobs that come in with the mills running good. As long as the mill's producing, all the outside contractors, all the suppliers are going to be able to employ more people. And as long as they keep producing the steel, it's good for the whole region.
Yeah.
No steel mill, this region doesn't exist. And for for the high school kid coming out of school now that isn't, as they say, college material, the steel mills are very important because they can get a good trade, a good job, good insurance, and support a family.
Yeah.
And without the steel mills, they couldn't do that.
Yeah, indeed. Bill, I wanted to ask you, because I know that you're a volunteer fireman, you're active in the community. I mean, if when the mill has a good year and the workers are making paychecks, it seems to me that local government can function, public services function. But what happens when there's like a downturn? I mean, do you see the impact? Are there struggles that occur?
I mean, it's all tax-based, as you know,
Yeah.
and if ArcelorMittal, for example, our plant was not putting out those tax dollars into the community, also, of course, they would suffer. We've been blessed enough that we haven't seen such a downturn to see that great impact locally in the smaller communities with, say, volunteer fire departments or the bigger cities. The tax bases have held enough that I've seen.
Yeah.
We've been fortunate to that point, but
So I know we were down in Fairfield, Alabama a few weeks ago. U.S. Steel shut the blast furnace down there a couple years ago, and the community essentially had to outsource its public services because they had no tax revenue left. So you see what kind of an impact that has, I think, on the community. So, the industry, obviously, a lot of things impact the employment, like how well the economy is doing, if people are buying automobiles, homes, if there's construction going on, imports, how many imports are coming in, and obviously technology and automation. I mean, you need fewer steel workers to produce the same amount of tonnage. So all those, factor into the industry, and it kind of goes up and down and up and down. One of the persistent problems has been imports, particularly since China came on the scene and now produces half of the world's steel. Most of it's made by companies that are run by the government instead of private sector companies like you guys all work for it, U.S. Steel, ArcelorMittal, and some of the suppliers. So I wanted to ask Mike Mitchell, because I think you've seen this. I mean, how does it feel when you're working hard, doing all that you can, all your brothers and sisters are working real hard, and you get undercut by either trade policies or cheating? I mean, what kind of an impact does that have?
Emotionally, it's huge. You see your coworkers out there. I, for one, have been one of those coworkers who have been out because of that. You don't have the income, and your family suffers in there. So I know what it feels like to go through those days in there. You struggle to pay the bills in there. Ironically, I was on a minimum income in there, and I was bouncing one payment off the other, trying to figure out which one to pay. I lost sleep, and when I totally ran out of money, I had the best sleep I ever had because I didn't have to try to figure out who to pay. But it's huge, Scott. It breaks up families in there. It affects the community in the sense of there's nothing for the next generation to come in to stay, especially for Northwest Indiana, for Indiana totally. Our age bracket has risen because there's nothing there for the young people there, so they tend to move out. And so the average age keeps rising in there. It's hard.
Yeah. Gus, let me ask you, because I know all of you have taken action, like urged your members of Congress to do something about this. And the local congressman here, Congressman Visklosky, has been very good on this. But I want to ask you, how do you feel when you see, whether it's a Democratic or a Republican administration, when you've seen the cheating occur, the unfair trade practices, and they've done virtually nothing about it?
I was fortunate enough to go down to the State House a few weeks ago with Lisa Beck, and we put in policy where all infrastructure for the state will be with domestic steel. I don't know if you've seen that yet, but I have to bring this up. I've been here a long time, and these tariffs, they were illegal. All we're asking for as steelworkers is a fair chance. I walk in that plant, I don $500 worth of safety equipment. My foreign competitors are operating with sandals and shorts on. When they get hurt, they go on the corner and they replace them. We spend millions of dollars a day on pollution control to make sure our air is clean and our water is clean. They're dumping on the ground. All we're asking for is a level playing field. We're not asking for anything special. Just let us compete. And unfortunately, these government subsidized, it puts us behind the 8 ball. And now we're going forward as a country realizing we have problems and we need to fix these problems. Or you know what manufacturing is, try to get a TV built here, try to get anything built in the United States. And this is, I mean, we have a few things that are still done here, but this is our last stronghold. This is, you know, security. We make steel for tanks and stuff. So this is very important for our defense too. So, and I don't want to seem like I'm rambling on, but this is dear to my heart because I've seen people lose their homes. I've seen people lose their cars. I've seen divorces. I've seen suicides, and it's not pleasant. All because of illegal actions that we're finally taking action on.
Yeah, I would say one thing that really angers me when people say, well, the president started a trade war. I'm like, steelworkers have been feeling a trade war for probably 3 or 4 decades, and there wasn't a lot of national attention focused on that at all, so there have been casualties of this for a long time. So, but I have to ask, because, you know, steel is cyclical, it's a commodity. Do you guys think, and I'll start with Mike here, do you guys think the tariffs are enough, or do you think, what else do you think needs to happen to make it a little more sustainable?
The tariffs are a start. We have to realize that there has to be some fair trade instead of a free trade. When we have all these free trade programs, the dumping was just unbelievable. Yeah. We need to put a fair trade program together to where our commodity goes out of the country and we regulate what comes into, we have some more control over what comes into our country. Mm-hmm. And until we have a program that's set up to be fair, the steel industry is going to hurt. And that's just a trickle-down effect. It affects every other industry. Mm-hmm. So it has helped. And it's a great start, but that's not the answer to the whole problem.
That's not the answer.
No,
we need more action.
We need more options. We need more to it.
Yeah, Bill, what would you tell to a public official who says, "Well, what's going on here? You guys ask for tariff relief all the time, and you want more, and you want more." What's your response when they?
Scott, I don't know what the total fix all is, but I do agree with Gus. We just need a level playing field.
Yeah.
We have stricter EPA regulations here than our competitors overseas.
Yeah, and you're not suggesting that you lower the regulations here.
Oh,
you
negative.
Guys like
No,
clean
no,
air and
no,
clean
no,
water,
absolutely.
But just that the other guys shouldn't be poisoning their own people.
Correct,
But, yeah,
correct.
All right.
You know, and after the tariffs went in the 232s, steel prices went on the rise, and as we can see, they're on a decline now.
Yeah.
We're up to about $900 a ton. Now we're coming down to about $540 a ton. Europe's selling steel cheaper than China.
Yeah.
So I think we might be in for another
Right,
blip in the
interesting,
market.
because
So
there's
we'll
been
see what
some
happens.
dumping in Europe because we had put up the tariffs, and so
Correct.
it depressed the price there. So you see, it's like whack-a-mole in
Right.
a lot of ways.
It's like 2008 all over
yeah.
again, but in reverse.
Right, that's right. So in Wally, I want to ask you. You know, one of the criticisms I hear about the tariffs are like, well, the steel is not related to national security somehow. The president just wanted to do this. I mean, I think you've probably seen the U.S. in a few wars and seen some of this. How would you respond to someone who says steel and national security? What's the connection?
I just know that the like you're saying, if we lose the steel industrial and we have to rely on another country to bring our steel in, where the hell do you think our defense is going to be? Where do you think it's going to be at? Because we have nothing to build tanks with or anything, and now we've got to rely on another country, and I don't think that would ever happen, you know. And like I said, they always talk about these countries. All you hear the politicians talking about is we need more jobs. Well, it's not that we need more jobs. It's quit letting them go out of the United States. Keep them here. If they want to go out, then put the tariff on them. Make them pay for it. You know, they want to go over and have this stuff made cheap, bring it back over here and sell it like it was made by a good American union person. And I cannot agree with their thing. When you take and say get a pair of shoes made for $5 over there and you come back here and sell them for $500, something's wrong with that. It's seriously wrong. But as far as them saying that they don't need the steel, they need us. They really do. And we're always trying to improve steel, and we do a good job at what we do. So I can't say, let's rely on another country, because we know that don't work a lot.
Right. Well, particularly China, since it makes
Right.
half the world's steel. Is China going to give us some armor plate?
Well, I doubt very seriously if they do. you know.
Probably not.
They
Yeah.
probably,
Right.
they probably wouldn't give us any kind of plate.
We're in a we're in an age where politics are really divisive and partisanship, and there's some people who love everything Trump does, and there's some people who hate everything that he does. And if you watch cable news, you see that too. And so, again, this tariff policy is something you all have been calling for a long time. Some industrial state Democrats have been calling for a long time. So Trump does this, and now you have like 22 Democratic presidential candidates. And the message that they hear from people is like, well, anything Trump's for, we have to be against. And y'all, I think, know it's a little more nuanced than that. What would if Pete Buttigieg or Elizabeth Warren or Joe Biden came to the local union and said, "What do you want to tell me about this?" How would you persuade them to say, you can mess with a lot of things, but don't mess with the tariffs?
Well, first of all, when a politician comes to me, and no way I'm disrespecting them, talk's cheap. I want to see actions. And you look at their background and see what they've done. And depending on how high a level politician came in, if it's a Visklowski or somebody that's backing the steel industry, I know where he's coming from. Elisa Beck, I know where they're coming from. Some of the others, and I don't care if they're Republican or Democrat, it's what's best for us, our families, our states. That's what I'd look for. And that's what I tell them. I'm too old to mince words. I'm going to tell them straight up that, this, and I would explain like everything that went around this table, how important it is to the communities. I've seen it, and I never want to live it again.
Yeah, yeah. Mike Mitchell, I mean, you've been working in the community for a long time. How would you explain to a presidential candidate that if someone loses a steel job, they're probably going to end up in a worse situation, not in a better one at all. So it's worth fighting for that. So they're going to say, well, Trump's for it, I'm against it. What are you gonna? How are you gonna persuade that?
My first thoughts would be to that president or potential presidential candidate is we need to focus on the big picture. And the big picture is, number one, we need to look out for how we can get America back on track to being the America it was that helped bring in the American dream. And those things require us to reach across the aisle, no matter who that person is. Unfortunately, as what you said earlier, our politics have become so polarized that no one wants to make that effort to do so because they feel like they're going to get primaried. Trade is important to this country in there. And when someone violates some of our trading agreements, we have tariffs. Tariffs are not a bad thing in there if used in an effective way. Not only did it save the steel industry, but it also brought back a tire company in Woodburn, Indiana, Cooper Tires, that brought a number of jobs back into the community. So I want to clear that myth up. What I would like for Congress to do besides the tariffs is they need to focus also on other policies to help strengthen our trade agreement. We have some policies out there, but it's set up so that by the time you prove damage, that company has left and bankrupt and gone. Those things need to be readdressed and changed. I would like our elected officials to put aside their differences. I know that seems impossible to do in this environment, but come together and work for what you first ran for office for and what you said you were going to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Speaking of which, Mark, I mean, one of the things that Trump said was like, oh, I want to do infrastructure. I want to do $2 trillion in infrastructure. That's a big number.
Right.
And then Nancy Pelosi, the speaker, says, okay, well, let's do it. We're up for it. And then Trump says, well, as long as you're investigating me, I can't work with you. So does it frustrate you when this is something tangible that could help the mill, that could get some product out and they're playing politics with it?
You know, and that's the thing, Scott, at the end of the day, we have to put our personal feelings aside and think for the American people. You know, when it comes to something like that, infrastructure, where we can put people back to work, we can build our country, make it strong, yeah, we have to put personal feelings aside. You know, at the end of the day, the politicians work for the American people. Whether it's a local politician or the state politician, they work for the people. You know, the people don't work for them. And they have to always realize that they're there to serve us. You know, we put these guys in office, and they have to do what's right for us. You know, we're entrusting our lives, and a lot of livelihoods bank on these guys making the right decisions. And making one wrong decision could put homeless people under the bridge, trillions of them, you know, because of that. So they have to think, you know, logically, and not because I don't like this person or take the personal judgment out of it, you know.
Yeah.
So they really have to, you know, decide, hey, you know, I'm here for the people. I might not like this young lady, but I have to do what's right for the American people.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Mike, I'm going to use your rural knowledge again. Sorry.
That's okay.
So you know, one of the things that you hear, you know, in the media is like, well, farmers, you know, they're bearing the brunt of the retaliation from this. I know you live around a bunch of farmers.
Yes, I do.
Where you are. I mean, what is? I imagine you've had some conversations with some of them about this. Are they willing to give the policy some slack, or are all of them just up in arms and saying this is the worst thing ever?
A lot of them are saying it's the worst thing ever.
Okay.
And it's hard to do because I did grow up on a farm.
Yeah.
And I've been around the farming industry my whole life. Some of my personal friends farm a lot of acreage, and it's a tough sale to explain to them how if we don't have the tariffs and we continually let these other countries dump steel into our country, that the trickle-down effect will get to them eventually in the farming industry.
Sure.
You know, it's not just a one-sided case here. We do have to have that trade with the agriculture industry, but we also have to use what we have in our own country. We have to provide for our people here in the country, you know. So the farming industry is really on the outside looking in right now with these tariffs. It's really hurting them on exports of crops.
Yeah.
And they're not quite sure where they want to stand when they talk to me about steel anymore.
Right, because a lot of them are supporters of the president.
Sure,
too.
sure,
So they probably
sure.
have kind of mixed feelings about all of this.
They do,
So,
and it's changed some of their feelings on the upcoming 2020 elections on how they're going to stand behind the President Trump right now.
Yeah, that's
So,
interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's like, although I will say, you know, they're getting billions of dollars from the Department of Agriculture. That's not what they want.
Subsidies aren't hurting them a
right.
bit.
That's not what they want. But the thought that occurred to me is like, so, you know, Wall Street gets bailed out, the car companies get bailed out, the farmers get that, and the steel industry just wants a level playing field, tariffs, and everybody's up in arms.
And unfortunately, the steel workers are the biggest fighters for these. You know, we're the ones going out to Washington D.C. and putting these fights together, and the other industries, it seems like especially the farmers with the subsidies, it's like, okay, we'll push you some money right now, and it'll get you through. We don't get that luxury in the steel industry.
Right.
You know, we have to fight for everything we get.
Yeah, yeah. So Bill, I know that the tariffs are a policy that's designed to produce something else eventually, which is, you know, reducing, this is really wonky, I guess, but reducing overcapacity in the global steel industry, because China makes way too much steel. And then everybody copies that behavior, and it gets dumped, and other countries subsidize, and they push back. And the U.S. has the most open steel market in the world, so a lot of it ends up here, and that affects your members. So since the tariffs have been in effect, there's been hiring, right, at Burns Harbor, but how are things now? Yeah.
Yeah, you're correct. They have been hiring here at our plant at ArcelorMittal Burns Harbor. But just recently, the plant managers contacted us, and they've actually put on a hiring freeze. I think a lot of it's got to do with what I just spoke about earlier, the downward trend in the steel pricing. Not sure what the future holds in the near future with steel pricing. Our country's got the biggest deficit it's ever had. So there's
trade
just,
deficit.
Yes, trade
Yeah.
deficit.
Yeah.
going back to your question about the presidential candidate, focusing on the working class people.
Yeah.
We need more jobs in America.
Yeah.
We need to make things here so we can get rid of that trade deficit.
Yeah.
It's a big circle, but
Yeah.
it's going to take it one step at a time to get there.
Right. Yeah, and it takes a lot of policies. People often ask me too, well, what's the one thing that we need to do? I was like, well, there's not a silver bullet. It's more like buckshot or something like that. You got to have a lot of, you got to have a lot going on because it's about the monetary policy, the trade policy. I mean, if you're running up huge deficits, that actually doesn't help a lot. You need to invest in infrastructure. You need to do a whole bunch of stuff together. But more than anything, you got to put manufacturing first.
Absolutely.
Instead of having it as an afterthought. So I thought I'd close by asking each of you, and I wanted to start with Wally, just to share something that your steel job allowed you to do. And it could be a lot of things, but just something something that because you had this job in steel, you were able to do something that you probably wouldn't have been able to do otherwise.
Well, all I can say is, I own my own house. It's all paid off. Good health insurance.
Yeah.
And I owe that to the Steelworkers Union for fighting for us. And like I said, we need more people out there fighting for good jobs and everything. But like I said, other than that, I'm not in debt, so I guess I could say that is one of the main things right there, you know. So
Looks like it helped you achieve the American dream then.
well, yes, sir. Sometimes it's a bad dream, but mine's been a good one so far. So,
Bill, how about yourself?
I agree with what you just said, the American dream. Raising a family, owning a home, sending your kids to college, good health care, buying a new car occasionally, a few vacations. Really what most Americans want. A job that you can have a quality of life with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
able to raise a family, take vacations, have like what was it, good insurance. It's all part of what the package of the steelworkers have given us, and the dream of America. And without that, I wouldn't have that. I wouldn't be in that situation.
yeah.
You know, it's great.
Mark, how about you?
Well, it actually has allowed me to raise my family, to show, I come from Gary, which is a low poverty city, to show a lot of my friends that you don't have to sell drugs to make it, that you can succeed by going to work and making a good living for yourself. You know, my daughter's in medical school, my son works for Pepsi, so my son's been through college. I'm able to take vacations. But more than anything, it shows my friends and the people that I grew up with and went to school that a little hard work and going to work and a good job can provide a good life for you.
Yeah,
You know?
makes a lot of sense. Mike Mitchell?
As a first-generation steelworker, out of a family of 8, it allowed me to. I got a job at U.S. Steel. It got us off of food stamps or public assistance, and allowed me to purchase a home for my mother and my 7 other siblings.
Wow. Well, that's really meaningful.
Wonderful
Yeah.
opportunity.
Yeah. Gus, I'll give you the last word here.
Well, of course, like everybody else, the American dream. Raised my kids, sent them to college, gave me 2 apprenticeship certifications, which I would have had to pay for. I have enough, they sent me to school enough, I could have been a doctor by now. But the biggest thing right now is with 41 years of service, I could pull the plug and I could get a job tomorrow, but I'm here so the next generation behind me. Somebody cared before us, and I want to make sure I care so the next generation and the next one have a job. That's what I'm here for now.
Yeah, it's
Make
allowing you to pay it forward.
Yes, I'm going to make sure that I can't control everything, but everything I can control, I'm going to make sure the next group has what we had, or at least has the opportunity for it. So that's why I'm still working.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Well, gentlemen, I want to thank you for the time you spent today, for sharing a bit about what your steel job has meant to you, what it's meant to the area, and I want to thank you for fighting for policies that will create a better future for the steel workers who are yet to come. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
In the 10-mile stretch between the Burns Harbor plant and United States Steel's Gary Works, you get a real sense of just how important this industry is to the region. You'll be on the road with trucks delivering products to and finished products back from those steel mills. You will pass by stores and grocery stores that are dependent on the paychecks of the workers in those mills and the managers who are buying the groceries, who are buying those meals. And you'll be passing the dozens of suppliers of products to those steel mills. In short, this is a region built around the steel industry. In addition to the stories of those workers in the mill, it's important to get the community's perspective as well. And so we sat down and talked with a steel supplier. We went to a community diner. We talked to a professor and to others who can tell us just how important this industry is to Northwest Indiana.
We're a niche manufacturer that we supply a unique product that's cement, it has no cement in it, that we line the insides of blast furnaces and molten vessels with.
Okay, so that's an essential part of steelmaking.
Oh yeah,
you
absolutely.
You can't make steel without your product.
Yeah, something that keeps the molten metal inside the furnace and inside the vessels. Yeah.
When you've seen downturns, and I'm thinking here like the beginning of the 2000s when there was the wave of bankruptcies, the Great Recession, 2008, 2009, and then there was an import crisis just a few years ago as well.
Yes.
How does that impact your business?
So whenever the steel mills have go into a recession and they reduce their capacity, they obviously reduce the amount of refractories or any other commodity that they use on a regular basis because they're not producing as much metal. So it has a direct effect on any of us that are supplying the steel mills with their essential needs, such as monolithics to reline the inside of their furnaces with.
So that probably translates into lower sales,
Yes.
Headcount. You have to perhaps lay
Yes.
folks off as well.
Yeah.
So you see that.
Yeah, so when they're running well, we are in there on a regular basis, taking care of, the troughs and the runner systems and all of their ladles and so forth. And so we have guys that have to be there, and they got to be on the spot every day, measuring, making sure that everything is going the right way and doing installations. So when you lose business and they shut down a facility like Granite City or Fairfield, Alabama, I have guys on the ground there that they essentially, they don't have a job anymore. Yeah. So you have to reduce your crews. You got to reduce the amount of employees.
I imagine when you feel like either here at Magnico or in the past at Inland, when you and your coworkers have been working hard, you make a good product, only to be undercut by imports and another government. That must be really frustrating. How does it feel?
Well, it does. That affects us when we sit in there. We strive to try to deliver a quality product at a reasonable price, but when you get undercut with foreign steel, or it affects everybody along right down the line, all the way down to my laborers that I have working here. When I have to lay people off because we don't have enough business or we lose business to another competitor, it affects us directly.
About 15 months ago, the president decided to put 25% tariffs on imported steel. What kind of an impact have you seen in the region?
We've seen quite a range of impact. We have seen steel production go way up, new investment in Gary Works being promised. Recently, our local unions got a contract renewed that has a 14% increase in wages over the next 4 years, which is one of the largest increases they've had for a while. And so we're seeing very real effects, and then also a lot of psychological effects too, as workers feel much more confident that their job is going to be around longer. Workers are working longer hours and putting in more time, and it's kind of spilled over into the entire economy here in Northwest Indiana.
It's actually been a sign of relief to know that you might have a little job security now, that the company is investing money back into the steel mill, back into the plant. because at one time before the tariffs got put into place, there was no investment going back in. You know, every day you come to work, you wonder if the gates are going to be open because the company's not investing money. The company's threatening to sell, bring China over to buy the plant. So, you know, there's a lot of rumors running around, but once you see the company investing money back into them, it's a sign of relief. We're going to be here. The gates are going to be open. You know, it's a little more. I can continue to provide for my family. You know, I can continue to send my son or daughter to college. You know, things are relieved now because of the tariffs in place, and the government is starting to give us a chance and see that, like Gus said, all we want is a fair chance here. Because, you know, we're not asking, you know, the majority of people think we're just greedy steel workers. You know, we're providing a service, you know, and we're just asking for a fair chance, you know, and with the tariffs in place, it gives us a chance to show that we can compete and that we can provide a better steel, you know, at a quality price.
I know you've been in the steel industry for more than a decade. What does your job mean to you?
It means a whole lot to me, you know, to provide for my family, you know, pay my house, pay my car note, health insurance. It means a lot to me.
Yeah, so it's a good job.
Yes, excellent.
How much do you depend upon the industry around here and the workers that go?
100%. I'm in a city that's pretty much dependent on this business in front of us, U.S. Steel. Otherwise, I don't think Gary, Indiana would exist. Everybody's affected by it. It's a business that has workers that do not live in the city. They work in the city and they travel daily 20, 30, 40, 50 miles just to have a job. So we do need this industry.
And as you look ahead, and I think kind of conceding that the Section 232 tariffs are probably a short to mid-term policy, probably not a long-term policy. What are some of the challenges that you think steel workers in the steel industry, what are they facing in the years ahead that our policymakers should be thinking about?
Sure. So right now, people are fairly happy with the way things are going. But as you said, the tariffs are definitely not intended to be a long-term solution. So in the short term, things are very positive, things are looking up, the economy is doing well, but we have to think more about what happens after this. And there's a lot of uncertainty there, whether the tariffs remain in place for a longer time period, whether the trade war escalates, whether it de-escalates, some kind of agreement is reached. All of that will be really, really important. And so I guess the kind of key word for the future is there's a lot of uncertainty, and the best you can do in that situation is just be prepared for some uncertain outcome in the future.
You started out at Inland Steel, and you were there for how long?
32 and a half years. 32 and a half years from 1974.
Yeah, and what kinds of jobs did you do in the?
Oh, I started off from the bottom. I started off as a laborer, working my way up to operations planner for 5 and 6 blast furnaces.
Yeah, but that's a wealth of experience, and obviously you're putting it to use here at Magneco.
Oh, that's correct. I transferred my skills from the blast furnace into the refractory fields, which is exactly what I was doing when I peaked off at Inland and retiring from there. So I went right into the refractory field.
What are the connections to the steel industry or to the
Family history, grandparents, uncles, my dad, my husband, my in-laws. I mean, it's just our whole life has been around U.S. Steel or Inland Steel or Youngstown Sheet and Tube. That's all we knew when we grew up, that our dads worked at the mill. That was how it was.
We're very fortunate in that we have an extremely good insurance that the company provides. And the company it's a very caring company. I mean, I've worked for the company for 36 years. You know, Mauro Gonzalez, he's worked for him for 20 after he retired from Inland Steel. You know, we have a very low turnover due to the fact that it's such a good, caring company. So, it's indescribable the effect it would have if these people, you know, lost their jobs. They're just, you know, they come to this company and they work forever. They don't, you know, we don't turn over a lot of employees. So it's a great company, and it would, any kind of reduction in tariffs would have a bad effect on the steel mills and thus on us.
we're dedicated to manufacturing, and I think this kind of ties back to the idea behind the tariffs. Any industry can be competitive if the state, the government, the federal government wants to support it and encourage it. And so the tariffs kind of represent a desire to get behind the steel industry. I think it's important that as the United States we have a strong steel industry, and that may be difficult to do and may require subsidies and tariffs and constant vigil to make sure that it's going to continue to be strong. But once you make that decision, then following through allows it to be strong down the road.
Someone's coming out of high school, they don't want to go to college. What would be your pitch to them to come work for Magneco or to consider a job in the steel industry?
Oh, wow. I say go to college if you choose a different line of work, and not go to college, come and work for us. Great line of work. Very physical.
And that will do it for the Manufacturing Report this week. I want to thank a lot of people who helped to make this episode possible. To United Steelworkers Local 6787 for making their hall in Chesterton available to us. To the good people at Magneco Mettrell for spending part of their busy day with us, telling us what it's like to be a steel supplier in Indiana. To Great Lakes Cafe for delivering some excellent food to us and for a great conversation. To Indiana University Northwest for making Micah Pollock, the professor, available to us. And I want to thank the great teams at E18 and AAM for making this episode possible, and for the region's own Matt McMullen for producing it. And finally, I want to thank you, the listeners and viewers, for continuing to give us great episode ideas and for feedback as well. If you want more information about these steel communities, the workers in them, and what this industry means to America's economy, you can find more at AmericanManufacturing.org. I'm Scott Paul, and until next time, together we can keep it made in America.